Hi, welcome to my podcast, Becoming a Cut Flower Grower. I'm your host, Lydia, and I'm here to share my year of growing and selling cut flowers. I'll be giving you the lowdown on everything I'm doing and sharing all the highs and lows, the good times and the inevitable disasters, all in real time. Join me on my cut flower journey, starting right now. Hello there, welcome to the podcast. I hope you had a really lovely Easter and you're all relaxed and refreshed and feeling excited about the upcoming week, which I know I am. I'm quite glad that Easter is over, actually. I always really look forward to the break, and then when it comes, it's either really busy doing stuff that isn't related to the flowers, and so I feel always like I've been away for too long and missed out on too much, and I always get a bit antsy and I want to get back to work. So I actually did spend all of Easter Sunday sowing seeds and doing some work on the plot, and it was really nice to get back to it. I had missed it an awful lot, and I was up doing some bits yesterday, and you joined me today in the greenhouse. I was going to do some bits on the plot this morning, and it was so cold up there that I thought, actually, I'm going to go and hang out in the greenhouse. And it is a gorgeously tropical 23 degrees centigrade in here, and it's lovely. So I've been sowing seeds all morning. I've done quite a few, actually. I was trying to use this chart and just catch up on everything I've been doing. So I've been doing some more Orlia, some more Statis. I've got a couple of trays of Cosmos started off, and some more Zinnias, and also some Helichrysum, which is the straw flower. And I'm going to pop back in the greenhouse. I've got two more different Helichrysums to do. So I've got Dragonfire and Apricot Peach to do. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was exactly how you sow your seeds. And there's obviously, everybody's going to have their own technique and their own way of doing things. But I wanted to discuss it briefly because I've been trying two different techniques this year, and I can't work out which is the best one. So I'm kind of dithering between which technique do I carry on with. So the two techniques I've got is doing a real scattergun approach, where you just throw the seeds in, and wherever they land, they get sown. So you could have some that are really close together and some that are a little bit further apart. But you just basically fill the entire tray up with them. And then the second technique is to use a tray again, but put the seeds very carefully. Each individual seed is placed in rows so that you can count how many you've put in, and you know how many you've got in each tray. And also when they come up, each one is pretty much perfectly spaced, equally apart from its neighbour. And when they come up, they look really, really nice and tidy. Everybody's got a bit of space. You can count clearly and see how many you've got. And you haven't got any where their roots are growing attached to their neighbour's roots or intertwined. So there's pros and cons of doing each, because I do feel like if I went with the first sort of scattergun approach, you can just throw absolutely masses of seed in there. And I have done that with the Nigella. And so I've ended up with trays that are just absolutely jam-packed. Excuse me. And what I'm going to have to do now is pot them on, because I did take them up to the plot and I was going to put them in the ground, and they look quite a decent size in the greenhouse. But when you take them to the plot and put them on a field, they look so tiny. They look just like a little snack for something. So I brought them back, and I thought, I can't leave them up there. They're too small. But because they're now so overcrowded in the tray, I'm going to have to pop them on, which is a real hassle. So that's why I don't like doing the scattergun approach. So yes, I might have probably more than 100 plants in this tray, but they're so jammed in that I'm now going to have to spend the time teasing all the roots out, potting them on individually. And it's just, I don't really have any storage space for them. So that is not a great idea. Whereas the trays that I've got a smaller number in, say 50, they've all got their own space. So it means I can leave them in the tray for a lot longer, and they're not going to need to be potted on. I'll be able to get them to a size where they can just go from the greenhouse, be hardened off outside, and then they can go on the plot without having that kind of intermediary stage. But then you don't necessarily have the numbers, so that you end up with more trays of the same variety, but all beautifully spaced. So it's a bit of a chicken and an egg one. And I think I'm going to stick with the neat rows because I do like that. And I find it easier when I can count them, and it helps to work out how much space I need for them when they go outside. So I've been carrying on with prepping the beds, and I did have a question from somebody about how I prep my beds. And generally speaking, all I do is remove the perennial weeds. So with the trial beds last year, when I was working out what on earth I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it, I did a lot of turf lifting and weed removal, which means in some areas of the plot, I've got beds where the perennials haven't really come back, or if they have come back, it's something absolutely like a really tiny nettle, and I can just hoik it out really quickly. So there was a bit more prep last year, but I subscribe to the no dig ethos. So I don't like disturbing the soil. I don't like damaging the infrastructure, disturbing all the creatures that are living in there, and basically ripping up all the fungal structures and everything that's already existing in the soil. And I'm on a bit of a slope, so I want to make sure that when it does rain, that we don't have any any soil moving or anything like that. And I just think that the less you disturb the soil, the better. So as I say, I haven't really done very much digging at all. Where I've had to lift the turf, I tend to just put a spade under it and then grab hold of the turf and just give it a really good shake and knock the soil off. And then the turf, normally I throw that wherever the ducks are hanging out, and they can go through that and pick out the bits that they want, because I think it's really, really important to keep the soil structure intact and not mess about with it. But what I've done sometimes is hoe off any little tiny weeds that have come through, and that I just do like a chop and drop. So I'll just chop them off and leave them where they are, and they'll just break down on the soil surface. So after I've got these kind of beds clean of perennial weeds and with no turf there, then I add masses of organic material. So I'm working my way through a combination of compost that I made, that, well, it's still being made all the time. I've got 3 really big bays, and then I've got 3 bays where I do just leaf mold. And sorry, there's a massive Chinook helicopter going right over the top of the greenhouse. You might be able to actually hear that on the microphone. That's great. Sorry about that. So yeah, I've got my homemade compost, and then I have been collecting soil from where we built the new shed for the ducks, and all this levelling had to get done, and so we ended up having to dig out quite a lot of the soil that the ducks have been doing their business on for a while. So that soil's been really great. And then the chickens are on shavings bedding, and every so often I clear that out. It's like a deep litter system, and it's very, very deep, like maybe 2 foot worth of soil, something like that, so that they have soil underneath the shavings. So it basically sort of all gets incorporated, because when the chickens get up first thing in the morning, they hop down off the perches and they just start scratching, and they sort of mix all of the shavings, all of their droppings and the soil all together. So you end up with this really wonderful mix, which every now and then I scoop out in a wheelbarrow, and I've been taking that down and putting that on the soil. And I literally just dump great big wheelbarrows of it on the soil and use a rake to just spread it over the surface. So I'm not digging that in either. Because some people actually incorporate organic matter into the soil, but because I don't want to disturb the soil, I'm just putting it on the top and then leaving it to be incorporated by all the worms that are in the soil already. I had a question about dahlias. When am I going to plant my dahlias out? Well, they're not going to be going out until all the risk of frost has gone. So for me down here in the south of England, that's probably going to be the end of May. But it's not set in stone, because we have been caught out in the past with really, really late frosts. And because the dahlias aren't really a plant that flowers until later in the season, I never feel like there's an enormous rush to get them out. I mean, I've never grown them on this kind of scale before, but when I've used them for my own garden or in other people's gardens, you know that it's not a plant that's like flowering in June and July anyway. So I'm never as I say, in a mad rush to get them out, because they've still got plenty of time. And what you don't want to happen is to put them out too soon and the shoots get hit by a frost and then they'll just die, which isn't going to kill the plant. It just means that the tubers then have to expend a whole load of other energy producing further shoots, and it just is a complete waste of their time and energy. And you'll then end up with even later flowering plants. So that's what I do with mine. And that will very much depend on which zone you're in the world for that. But I was watching a reel by a lady who grows dahlias in Shropshire, which is in sort of like the middle of the UK. And she puts hers out. She starts putting hers out now. So she doesn't go through that whole waking them up, putting them in trays business. She literally gets the tubers out of storage and puts them in the ground. And her reasoning was that by the time her tubers have put on decent sized shoots, that will be in maybe, say, a month's time. And by that point, the risk of frost will be much reduced for us. And therefore, she doesn't worry about putting them straight out or missing that whole waking up stage, because she knows that by the time they've put this growth on, the risk of frost should be quite low. And therefore, that's the technique that she uses, which obviously saves her an awful lot of time, because she doesn't have to go through any of this, putting them in trays to wake them up and then transferring them then into pots and then growing them on in pots till they're ready. But I do think it's important to say that she times this. She's a professional grower, dahlia grower, and she times it very carefully. And she's like an expert. She knows what she's doing. I wouldn't go out there today and put mine out there. I mean, she obviously knows what she's doing and she has faith in what she's doing. I like to watch my tubers and see the shoots come up, so that I know that tuber has made it through the winter and it is viable. Because sometimes, especially the little tiny ones, I've found in the past, they don't shoot. So you can end up planting something out that then rots off in the next month and you don't even have anything there and you can't keep an eye on it. And also because I'm splitting the tubers that Richard Bailey, my dahlia expert, gave me, you're not going to do that once you've planted them in the soil. So you'd have to split them before you put them in the soil. And before you split them, you want to see eyes. You want to see where the shoot is going to come out of the tuber from. And you can't do that if you've just put them in the ground. So I can see entirely what this lady's doing. And I'd love to talk to her about it, because it obviously cuts out this enormous stage in the process. And that would be brilliant. But I can't unravel all of it. So if you are thinking of putting yours out, you do have to wait. If you're going to put them out and they've shooted, you've got to wait until the last risk of frost has gone, or you have to be able to protect them in some way. And again, that's another level of, I suppose, labour that I don't really want to get into. I'm quite happy having them sitting around where I can keep an eye on them. And every so often I'm going to take a cutting as well. And I don't want to be having to monitor the weather so closely that I'm up there with fleece and then covers, and you've got to build all this stuff and it becomes like a really huge thing. So the technique I'm going for is to keep my guys indoors until it's absolutely ready for them to go out. And a couple of weeks, or at least 10 days before they go out, I'll harden them off. And that'll be fun, because there's 50 odd of them. So I shall be ferrying them in and out of the house and the garden for 10 days, like some kind of school run, but it's got to be done. So the other thing I was going to talk about, I was having a look on the Instagram of the florist that I'm going to be working with this year, and she's just done the most stunning wedding. She's such a talented woman. I'm I just love looking at what she does. I'm in awe of her work. She's done this incredible wedding, and one of the features, she's done like a feature installation in the hallway of this wedding venue, and this huge, it's like a stone, really big, like a heritage listed house, with this fabulous sort of stone, pale apricotty stone hallway, and this incredible, what looks like a marble or sandstone staircase that curves right down. And Joe's done this incredible display that the flowers that comes all the way down the staircase, and then there's like a huge display at ground level where you go in. And it's the most jaw-dropping feature. Like, I just couldn't wrap my head around how stunning it was. And I want to ask her all these questions about like the mechanics of the installation and what did she use and how did she fix everything on, and just incredible. And I looked at it and thought, okay, it's amazing. And my next thought was, I'm never going to be good enough to supply her. So that's the bad side of my brain that just pops up and goes, no, you'll never be good enough to do that. And then I thought for a minute, I thought, you know what? Actually, I am going to make the most fantastic flowers this year, worthy of a top wedding and event florist using them in her displays. And what's more, mine are going to be British. They're going to be grown without any chemicals or pesticides or insecticides or anything. They're not going to have any unnatural fertilizers or chemicals applied whatsoever. And they're going to be entirely seasonal. And they're going to be grown locally for the weddings that she's doing. So I gave myself a bit of a pep talk, and I was like, what I'm going to do this year is going to be just as amazing, because she's such a skilled florist. She's going to turn them into something amazing, I know. So what the point of that was to say, don't be put off when you see things on Instagram and how other people are doing them. Just remember what you're trying to achieve, what you're going to achieve, and what your skills are, what your unique selling point for your flowers is, and have faith that you will be able to deliver something that is fantastic, that you have grown yourself and poured all this blood, sweat, and tears and love and everything into it. And I think that is a fantastic product to go to somebody's wedding or a special occasion, something that's been grown naturally in this country. And it really is a labour of love. So in terms of what I've been doing since the last time I spoke to you, which was just before Easter, I have sown some more Dahlias and some more scabious. And also I went out and panic bought loads of peas, because I realised suddenly that I don't have any peas. And along with broad beans, peas are one of my most favourite vegetables to grow. So I went and did loads of that. The Cavallonero has been planted out, and the Orlia, my first batch of Orlia, they have been planted out. Again, they looked a really decent size in the greenhouse. Take them up to the plot, plant them out, looked absolutely tiny. What I've done with those, because they don't get to be really big plants anyway, is that I've interplanted them all around my Eryngiums and some of the Rudbeckia next door, just to fill in those gaps, because I know that the perennials aren't going to increase enormously in size this year. And there's just enough space to have these pretty little Orlia growing up between them. So that's happened. We have had a little bit of rain over the weekend, because obviously it's a bank holiday and it's England, so you always get rain. And we did have some. So I've got about 100 litres I've managed to collect in the last week, which I'm absolutely delighted about after my disaster last week with leaving the tap open. And in terms of what's actually doing well in the plot right now, the cornflowers that went out last week, they've actually started to look comfortable in their spot. So I think I did a plot update last Thursday and I talked about them, and they were kind of just sat there looking like they'd just been planted out. And I went and had a look at them this morning, and they were all just like, there's just something different. You can just tell when you look at them. They're like a little bit perkier, and they look a lot more comfortable in the space. They look like their roots have taken a little bit. They've got hold of where they are, and they're just going to go for it. The sweet peas don't look any different. They still look a little bit shell-shocked, like they're still getting a hold of what they're doing. And the garlic has come up, which I'm really pleased about. I've intercropped that between some of the perennials as well. So that's all fine. So it's all ticking along nicely, and I've got some more broad beans coming up. My tomatoes are away, and the zinnias are just doing so nicely. I'm so excited about these zinnias this year. Last year was the first year ever that I'd grown them, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And there is a knack to them. There is a point at which you have to pinch them out, and you have to count the number of leaves you've got. And then you pinch them out and you just think, oh, this just so goes against the grain. I don't want to be pinching anything out. I find that the most difficult part actually is pinching out But I did it, and they were beautiful plants, incredibly healthy. I didn't have any problems with them. Nobody tried to eat them. Nothing bad happened to them. They didn't need any staking. They were just really good doers. So I'm hoping that the ones I've got this year, I've got 3 different varieties this year. And so far, the seedlings are all looking really, really confident and robust. And the ones that were sown on the 11th of March, they've got how many? 1, 2, 3 pairs of leaves. Really nice, chubby little stems. And I'm really pleased with them. Now, the zinnias are tender, so they are going to have to stay in the greenhouse until the last risk of frost has gone completely. But they obviously go outside for, well, when they're a little bit bigger, they'll go outside to harden off and get used to being outside. And the weather, little bits of breeze or wind is good to strengthen their stems as well, because it's just a little bit too much of a protected space inside the greenhouse. They tend not to sort of toughen up enough. And I find the hardening off a week or 10 days is a really good opportunity to kind of get them ready, if you like, braced for the reality of actually going outdoors. But they can't spend the night outdoors really until the last bit before they're ready to go out, just in case we have a frost. And I'm normally very good at keeping an eye on the weather and checking, to be on like a frost alert at this time of year. But I'm quite happy to leave them in the greenhouse, because at the moment there is still enough space for them, and so they can get as big as they possibly want to, and then they can get hardened off, and then they can go out. So I think that's all I've got to tell you from the greenhouse. I'm going off to see my Dahlia expert, Richard Bailey, later this afternoon. So if I need to, I'll add something onto this episode. If not, I will report back on what we got up to on my Friday episode. In fact, that's probably a better idea, because I think this is probably going to be a long enough episode for you anyway. So I will leave it at that for today and wish you all the very best as always. And I will be back with you on Friday, and I hope you have a great growing week.